Hey everyone, online campus pastor Robert Murphy, and here with Steve Walters, Pastoral Care here at Christ Community Church. And we're in the midst of our God I Have a Question message series, where we've been answering the questions you've submitted. Now, on a Sunday morning, we're not able to answer all the questions, but we thought we'd take this time to answer some of those that did come in, just kind of give a briefer response to them. And one of the questions that came in was about anxiety and depression, and just kind of what is the response to that? How do we respond to that? What's the Bible have to say about that? So Steve, obviously with your pastoral and counseling background, anxiety and depression is something that has come up a lot, but sometimes, as we were talking before this, people maybe don't connect the dots, but those are things that are really in the Bible.
Yes. We were talking about Saul in the Old Testament, David, Elijah, others we feel had symptoms and demonstrated depression and behavior. But what I think is interesting is when you think of Elijah and David, when they were depressed, they were very transparent before God, and they went to God.
Yeah.
Whereas Saul tried to find it in other ways. He went to women. And then also the witch of Endor, more of the spiritual, component, the evil side. And we have to recognize that we are weak, inadequate human beings, and that we're vulnerable. And some of us are more vulnerable to discouraging, depressing thoughts rather than others. But we all need to turn to God. No matter what. I think antidepressants are the second highest prescribed medication in the United States. I'm not against antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine. I do think, though, that when you take medicine, you need to commit to work at and talk to somebody about dealing with that. It's just like taking aspirin for a serious headache. It's covering up something when there's really something underneath that's serious. A tumor or whatever. I think for anxiety or depression, you can take the medicine to deal with the symptoms, so then you have the freedom to be able to address the issues with the right counseling and with the focus on God.
I think that's so true. And someone, as we've talked about before, I was diagnosed with anxiety for a moment in my life, and it was lots of intense stress, and I definitely took some medication, and in those moments it helped. It was a crazy situation, but I think it's so true. Like, we have to be careful, like what we look to as our coping mechanisms. Something we've talked about before is the addiction stuff, and you saw David and Elijah, and sometimes we can be kind of cliche in the church, like, well, just go to God. But they did go to God, and like you read the Psalms, you read some of Elijah's prayers where they're just like bearing their soul and just laying it all out there. I think sometimes there's this hesitancy to do that with God, and obviously we should approach the throne, carefully as the Lord, but I think He does want to hear us, and I think He wants us to pour our hearts out. And I think the Psalms that David wrote really should offer encouragement to those if you're struggling with something, you're struggling with depression. And I think it's good, instead of like going to, whether it's, we talk about different people in the Bible who went to relationships as like, I'm going to use that to cope. And we saw that, with Saul, or with others who looked at things as a coping mechanism to deal with that. Like, I think God really wants us to go to Him, and I think the Psalms are something that really can offer a lot of hope to us, or just even relation. Like, wow, this is King David, who's like, highly esteemed, and yet he's just, man, he's like, wow, he's
gut-wrenching. And I do think, though, that in society today, we are a microwave mentality. We want fast food solutions to what's going on. And we don't know how long David wrestled with depression. And what the Psalms cover. How many months, years. And we feel like if I'm feeling sad for an extended period of time, I want to get immediate relief. And I think we need to understand that maybe that's what God is wanting, is to kind of refine us and help us to trust in Him for the long haul, rather than I feel sad, make me happy. And that's not the case.
And switching gears a little bit, we talked about anxiety, just kind of and just in that vein, and just, you were referencing, you have a Bible right there just from Luke about what even Jesus speaks to this about not being anxious. Maybe you want to elaborate a little about that.
Yeah, I just read this past week, and Jesus is saying in Luke chapter 12, starting with verse 22, he says, "Don't worry about your life. Can worry add a single hour to your life? Since you can't do this very thing, why do you worry about the rest?" He said. Then he goes on to say, "Consider."
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of interesting as I was thinking about this. Worrying or being anxious is trying to get man to solve problems bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And they want to control. Whereas Jesus is saying, consider how the wildflowers grow. So why would considering about flowers make you feel better?
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, considering means you're looking at it from a God perspective. You're looking at it from a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And you're reflecting on how God can take care of this rather than how you can take care of this. So there is, with dealing with anxiety, there's emotional and physiological issues, but I think it's a spiritual opportunity to be trusting in God and recognizing who God is during those times when you're feeling anxious.
No, it's so true. I think it's hard for us, especially in our culture, where we feel like we can, in America, like there's something to fix everything,
Yeah.
and that's not always the case. And it's a trust issue, like you said. Like, all right, God, I'm going to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. Like, it says, like, there's enough worrying today, and just and
Yeah.
so I think that's good. Well, hey, Steve, thanks for taking some time to meet with us and just to share some of this. And like, for those of you who are watching, really, go to the Bible. I think, read the teachings, read what Jesus says. I'd also encourage you to check out the Psalms, and 1 Samuel, just the life of David, and the life of Elijah. Just reading what these real characters of the Bible that we sometimes hold to like these like impeccable standards. Like, they are heroes of the faith, but yet they were human and they struggled. And they're people that we can relate to and look to as just saying, okay, there's a guide for me as to what I can do to help deal with this. So hey, Steve, thanks, man.
You bet.
All right.
Pleasure.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.